reliance on institutional action and the continued weakening of the United Nations. In this regard, I call upon all our African brothers to intensify and mobilize the necessary efforts so that the upcoming negotiations are based on the 2015 Framework for Action, which constitute a reference document reflecting the positions and proposals from nearly 120 member states of the United Nations.
Finally, Algeria also called for addressing illegitimate external interference, which is among the main factors fueling instability and hindering conflict resolution and democratic development processes on the continent. And representing the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmadjid Tebboune, Prime Minister Seif Gharieb has taken part in the G20 session held on the sidelines of the 39th Summit of the African Union in Addis Ababa. In a message read on his behalf by the Algerian Premier, the President of the Republic congratulated South Africa on the success of its G20 presidency, marked by the first G20 summit held on African soil, and thanked President Cyril Ramaphosa for inviting Algeria to participate. He highlighted Algeria's participation in high-level discussions on key G20 priorities and stressed that the African Union's full membership in the group represents a major step toward ending Africa's marginalization in global governance and strengthening its role in shaping economic decisions. He also welcomed efforts to advance African development priorities, including development financing, debt relief, reform on the international financial system, climate action, and a just energy transition adapted to the continent's needs. Let's listen to him.
We held the effort made to include the issue of development financing and debt relief for African countries at the heart of the G20 discussions through reforming the international financial system to be fairer and more responsive to the needs of developing countries, as well as through supporting these countries to achieve sustainable development, confront climate challenges, and achieve an energy transition that takes into account the specificities of the African continent.
Meanwhile, several speakers at the 39th Ordinary Summit of the African Union in Addis Ababa called for African-led solutions to the continent's challenges and greater unity in addressing issues of peace, security, and Africa's representation at the UN Security Council. AU Commission Chairperson Mahmoud Ali Yusuf stressed the need for African solutions to African problems, highlighting water security and sanitation, the main theme of this year's summit. Mauritania's Minister of Energy and Petroleum, Mohamed Ould Khaled, is starting today a two-day working visit to Algeria to discuss ways to strengthen bilateral cooperation. The Mauritanian Minister of Energy and Petroleum is accompanied by a high-level delegation, including officials from major Mauritanian energy companies such as the Mauritanian Hydrocarbons Company, SMH, the Mauritanian Electricity Company, Somelec, and the Mauritanian Refining Company, Somir, as well as several ministerial ministry officials. His visit is part of strengthening the brotherly relations and cooperation between Algeria and Mauritania and embodying the shared desire to elevate the bilateral partnership, particularly in the fields of hydrocarbons, mining, energy, renewable energies, and training. During this visit, the Mauritanian minister will hold talks with the Minister of State, Minister of Hydrocarbons and Mines, Mr. Mohamed Arqab, as well as the Minister of Energy and Renewable Energies, Mr. Murad Ajjal. Discussions will focus on expanding bilateral cooperation, exchanging expertise and experience, and exploring partnership and investment opportunities in projects of mutual interest. Meanwhile, the first session of the Algerian-Mauritanian Joint Parliamentary Commission held over 2 days under the theme Promoting Parliamentary Roles to Strengthen Algerian-Mauritanian Economic Cooperation wound up here in Algiers. In a joint press statement, the Speaker of the National People's Assembly, Ibrahim Boughali, described the meeting as highly productive, marking a key step in strengthening the strategic partnership between the two countries and advancing multidimensional cooperation based on good neighborliness. He highlighted that the session reflected the shared vision of President Abdelmadjid Tebboune and his Mauritanian counterpart Mohamed Ould Sheikh Al Ghazouani to boost economic integration, security, stability, and South-South cooperation in Africa. Let's listen to Mr. Boughali.
I affirm that the growing dynamic marking the Algerian-Mauritanian relations comes in implementation of the wise approach and strategic vision led by the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmadjid Tebboune, and his brother, the President of the Islamic Republic of Mauritania, Mr. Mohamed Ould Sheikh Al Ghazouani, which is based on strengthening economic integration, consolidating security and stability, and supporting South-South cooperation in the African region.
جنوب في الفضاء الإفريقي.
Mr. Boughali also emphasized the growing role of parliamentary diplomacy in removing legislative obstacles, promoting investment, and supporting key infrastructure projects like road links, border crossings, and logistics, enhancing economic connectivity between North and West Africa. For his part, the Speaker of the Mauritanian National Assembly, Mohamed Bamba Miguet, indicated that the meeting reflected a strong political will from both governments, reinforced by numerous agreements and parliamentary cooperation. He emphasized the need to implement these agreements on the ground, particularly in energy, fisheries, animal resources, and vocational training, while coordinating on security, migration, and regional challenges.
There are strategic relations between the two countries, and this relationship has been translated into many agreements by the government and the Mauritanian and Algerian parliaments, as they represent the two peoples. We are following up on these agreements, and we pray to Allah for their success and for achieving the major goals, which of course should be noticeable on the ground.
Finally, the Mauritanian official expressed hope that the second session in Mauritania will yield tangible progress for the benefit of both countries and both peoples. In the Middle East now, UNRWA's General Commissioner Philippe Lazzarini has affirmed that the UN agency is an asset for peace in the Gaza Strip, considering insufficient the ceasefire enforced in the Palestinian enclave. In a message posted on social networks, he said that he made the statement during the Munich conference, during which he recalled that UNRWA was essential for providing public services and reinforcing the capacities of the Palestinian institutions. He stressed that UNRWA had the necessary human resources, expertise, and confidence of the community, assuring that it plays a crucial role in supporting the public health by vaccinating children, providing drinking water, and taking in charge the waste management. He emphasized that the Palestinians in Gaza have the right to access to medical care and to vital social services for which UNRWA is well positioned. The statement by the head of UNRWA came as the Israeli army today pursued its bombardments of the Gaza Strip, killing at least 12 Palestinians. Several other Palestinians were wounded in the airstrikes, which hit notably areas west of the northern town of Jabalia, as well as Khan Yunis in the southern part of the territory. In this connection, the president of the state of Palestine, Mahmoud Abbas, recalled that the Palestinian people continue to be confronted to the Israeli occupation and to an escalation of crimes and violations. In a speech read on his behalf by Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Mustafa during the 39th summit meeting of the African Union held in Addis Ababa, he stressed the necessity to boost the international efforts in order to set the end of the war against Gaza and of the Palestinian suffering as an urgent priority. And the so-called Artists of Palestine group, bringing together over 100 personalities, have brought their support to the UN rapporteur for the Palestinian territories, Francesca Albanese, who is targeted by fallacious charges. In an open letter, it reiterated its support to the defender of the people's right and of the Palestinian people's right to exist, and called for sanctions to be taken against the Israeli occupying authorities, which are blamed by NGOs as well as UN Inquiry Commission for committing a genocide in Gaza. And finally, talks between Iran and the United States will resume next week in Geneva under Oman's mediation. The announcement was made by the Swiss foreign minister. The U.S.-Iranian talks are aimed at overcoming the divergences existing between the two countries, notably over the Iranian nuclear program. In this respect, the Iranian foreign minister Abbas Araghchi advocated diplomacy, saying that his country hopes a fair and balanced agreement could be reached over Iran's nuclear program. And with this last piece of news, we come to the end of this news bulletin. Time now for our weekly program, the International Event of the Week. For me, it's the end of that news bulletin in English. I'll meet you again tomorrow for a fresh edition of our news bulletin. Until then, stay tuned to Radio Algeria International, and bye-bye for now.
The International Event of the Week.
Hello and welcome to Radio Algeria International. This week, the Israeli Security Cabinet approved new measures to expand its authority over the occupied West Bank, triggering off widespread regional and international condemnations. The move aimed at deepening control over the West Bank will strengthen the Israeli administrative and legal authority over the territory where the Palestinians seek to set up a future state. The new rule provides for a lifting of long-standing restrictions on land sales, allowing the Israeli occupying authorities to increase their planning and enforce powers in areas previously under the Palestinian Authority's control. The Israeli decision was strongly condemned by the UN, the EU, the Arab League, and several other countries as an attempt to impose a de facto annexation of the West Bank. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas described the measure as dangerous and as an open Israeli attempt to legalize the Jewish settlement expansion, land confiscation, and the demolition of Palestinian properties, even in areas under Palestinian sovereignty. He called on the UN Security Council to intervene immediately. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said he was gravely concerned by the decision that threatens prospects for a two-state solution, while recalling that all Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank are illegal and are in blatant violation of international law, including relevant UN resolutions. Asked if the UN Security Council will fail, as it has been the case so far, to take strong measures to force the Israeli occupying authorities to reverse these measures, while are widely seen as an attempt to institutionalize a segregationist system, our political analyst Hamoud Salhi had the following.
The United Nations Security Council is always expected to fail to take actions against Israel. That failure is both rooted in structural and international factors. Structurally, the problem begins with the veto power. The United States holds the ability to block any Security Council resolution, and it has done so repeatedly when a resolution sought to hold Israel accountable for violation of international law. This is not marginal details. It is central to how the Council operates. The veto does not just protect Israel directly, it also reinforces U.S. influence over its allies, shaping their positions through political leverage and the weight of domestic lobbying when it comes to Israel. Take Europe as an example. The European Union is Israel's largest trading partner, and the relationship goes far beyond trade. It includes cooperation in research, technology, and influence, and intelligence. There are divisions among European states regarding Israel and Palestine. However, those divisions have not prevented the European Union from acting collectively in ways that sustain its broader partnership with Israel. This structural impediment also extends beyond the United Nations Security Council to other UN institutions. For example, the International Criminal Court moved to indict Israel on charges of genocide and issued warrants to bring Israeli leaders to international justice, including the current Prime Minister. Yet rulings like this have been firmly rejected by the United States and other Western states. So even when legal mechanisms attempt to function independently and address allegations as serious as genocide, they encounter immediate geopolitical consideration or resistance. But this is not only structural, it is also intentional. Global public opinion has shifted. Recent surveys show that large majorities around the world express support for Palestine. Some states have taken limited actions, such as opposing settlement expansion. Yet states could go further if they chose to act with a clear political will. Change takes time, but it also requires intention. Within many countries today, support for Palestine has grown significantly. However, that support has yet to fully translate into changes in political leadership. Political transformation is often incremental. We can see signs of this in recent elections in the United States. Position on Gaza and on Palestinian rights have increasingly become defining issues for voters. For many, a candidate's stance has become a red line, a test of whether they deserve their support. In the last election, President Donald Trump presented himself as more understanding of the Palestinian cause and met with pro-Palestinian supporters. His challenger did not engage in the same way, and democratic leadership declined to meet representatives of the Arab community. The outcome reflected, at least in part, how salient this issue has become for segments of the electorate. This development suggests that public pressure is building. Political change rarely happens overnight, as the Algerian struggle for independence reminds us. Movement for justice and self-determination often take years, even decades. The current shifts in public opinion and electoral behavior may represent early steps in a longer process, one that continues to unfold.
Several Arab countries, including Egypt, Saudi Arabia and Qatar, described the Israeli decision as accelerating attempts towards an illegal annexation of the West Bank and displacement of the Palestinian people. They warned against the continued Jewish settlement expansion, which fuel violence and conflict in the region. The EU also strongly condemned the move as a breach of international law and as damaging to the peace efforts. The United Kingdom also strongly condemned the move and called on the Israeli authorities to reverse the decision, saying that any unilateral attempts to alter the geographic or demographic makeup of Palestine is strongly unacceptable. Reacting to the Israeli measures, the White House reiterated the U.S. opposition to the annexation of the West Bank. Since the conclusion of the Oslo Accords in 1995, which laid the foundation for the future Palestinian state, no progress has been made to achieve such an objective on account of the continued Israeli occupation and settlement building and the unprecedented rise in the Jewish settlers-related violence. Asked if the Israeli measures are designed to leave no room for peace, as the occupying authorities are seeking to impose a de facto partition of the Palestinian territory that undermines the viability of a future state, our political analyst Hamoud Salhi commented the issue.
There is no doubt that these measures are designed to curtail any attempt to achieve peace and the establishment of a viable Palestinian state. But this is not new. Before October 7, Smotrich made the preemption of a Palestinian state a prime condition for him to join Netanyahu's cabinet. Others in Israel said the same thing. These latest measures are also about Israel's comprehensive annexation plan, which, as we all know, began in 1948 and continues every day with the building of new settlement. Since 1948, the Jewish state has been implementing a strategy to expropriate Palestinians from their land and force their displacement. The new laws are a step in that direction by providing legal cover for settlers to take land that is not theirs, and by extension, giving them further cover to continue harassing, terrorizing, and creating fear among the Palestinian population in order to force them to leave their homes. The policy of displacement has been in force since 1948. With Israelis refusing the return of Palestinian refugees to their homeland, engaging in wars as is glaring in the war against Gaza, and forming militias to terrorize Palestinians while changing what analysts describe as the geography of Palestine. With over 700,000 settlers currently are in the West Bank, if not more than that. These recent events have uprooted 34,000 Palestinians living in the 3 refugee camps for Palestine and have forced Palestinians to move from 60 areas, just as an example. But just as previous efforts failed this latest inhumane action from the Jewish state will see the same result. As a respected and well-known independent Palestinian leader noted, it is true that Palestinians are being displaced in a large number of their homes, but they remain in Palestine, a clear and crystal image that the Palestinian the policy of displacement, the policy to exterminate Palestinians through force or law will fail. Palestinians will have their state, a viable and fully sovereign state, one day, if not sooner, later.
It is worth recalling that an advisory opinion was issued 2 years ago by the International Court of Justice, reiterating that the Israeli occupation of the Palestinian territories was illegal and should end. These settlements considered illegal